Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Zoom na Cartografia. Is the broadcast okay? Can you hear me well?
Yes, it's okay.
Dear colleagues, it's a great pleasure for us today to welcome Professor Sônia Cirino, who is our guest today. Professor Sônia Cirino studied Anglo-Portuguese language at State University of Londrina, after which she got her MA in linguistics from the University of Iowa in the US. She received her PhD in linguistics from the University of Campinas, Unicamp. She be visiting scholar in two important universities over the years at the University of Cambridge in 2009 and Stony Brook in 2015. She became associate professor at the State University of Campinas in 2011, where she currently at the postgraduate program in linguistics. Her research focuses on the area of theoretical linguistics within the branch of generative syntax, where she has a number of important papers in comparative syntax of Romance language and diachronic syntax with particular interest in Brazilian Portuguese. Professor Sônia Cirino has an hour to give her conference, which is entitled A Nanosyntax Approach to Syncret Negation in Brazilian Portuguese. After that, we will have some time for discussion. So please, if you have any questions, just send us the YouTube chat or Zoom chat with your name, country, and institution. And now, Professor Sônia Cirino, welcome to Zoom na Cartografia. Thank you for being here us today. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Yes, okay. Thank you very much for the invitation. And this is a pleasure for me. I'm going to present this paper, which is an ongoing project about syncretic negation in Brazilian Portuguese. And as I said, this is an ongoing work, so I'll be very happy if you can make comments, suggestions, and I'll be open to your questions. So it has been shown in several works on Brazilian Portuguese that there are three positions for the negative word não, for sentential negation. So you can say, eu não comi o chocolate, or eu não comi o chocolate não, or comi o chocolate, or comi o chocolate não, or comi não. All of these three sentences mean I didn't eat the chocolate. The first one is the unmarked form of sentential negation, and according to the literature, 1B and 1C are related to pragmatic or discourse functions. So, for example, if you have a context where there was a chocolate on the table, and the chocolate is eaten, everybody looks at Pedro, who is a chocolate addict, implying that he's the one who has eaten it. He says, "Eu não comi o chocolate, não," which this double negation has a reinforcing function, negating a presupposition. And for the third type, if you have a context of a question where somebody asks, "Did you eat the chocolate that was here?" This person will say, "Comi o chocolate não," or "Comi não," or just "não." So this third form of negation is related to the anaphoric negator não. And it's a contradiction of a preposition inferable from the discourse, and it's more common in the northeast of Brazil. So these three types are syncretic. These three types are syncretic and convey sentential negation. But I will focus on a fourth type of syncretic negation in Brazilian Portuguese, because more recently, the negative word não has a new position. It is possible between an auxiliary and a non-finite verb, as we can see in 3. This data in all of these slides are going to be taken from the internet. And here I'm focusing on progressive and perfect periphrasis, but it's possible also to have this negation in this position when you have a prospective periphrase, for example, ir plus infinitive. But I'm not going to focus on this here because this implies other things that we have to take into account, but that's also possible. So the example is, minha conexão é discada e eu estou não trabalhando com meu servidor. So my connection is dialed and I'm not working with my server. In English, this is the normal position of não, but this is not possible in other Romance languages as far as I know. You can also say, eu posso almoçar mais tarde? Eu posso almoçar mais tarde, mas eu posso almoçar mais tarde. Tenho não feito as refeições esse dia. So I can have lunch later. I have not had my meals these days. So the question is, of course, how can this low não, I'm going to call this low não, which is a new type of negation in the language, how can it be analyzed? So first I'm going to give you data of this low now. Then I'm going to talk about a phenomenon which has been called inhibited eventualities readings to see whether this is the same kind of thing. And then I'm going to talk about the properties of this low now. Then I'm going to discuss syntactic positions for negation and then propose a position for this low now in the clausal spine, and then the conclusion. So for perfect periphrases with ter and now, and then the verb in the participle, we have several examples. For example, tenho não vivido minha melhor versão há alguns dias, meaning I have not lived the best version of myself these days. Of course, this doesn't mean that the person has died. It means that she has not been living a kind of life that you would expect her to live. And also this sentencing for, ele está fazendo o que tinha não feito antes. He is doing what he had not done before. So he's doing now what he had not done before. But this now in this position is interesting because it's affirming something that he has not done before. Also, when we have progressive periphrases with estar and with the verb in the gerund, we can have this same kind of position for now. Estou não vendo resposta e terei que acionar os meios judiciais. I can't see an answer and I have to move judicial means. So this is taken from a piece in the internet when the person is complaining about some service in the internet and she has complained, but she está não vendo, no answer, so. And the other one is, não solicitei a troca porque já estava não gostando do atendimento. And this was something that happened in a restaurant. The person didn't like the food had some problem, and then the person says that she didn't ask for a replacement because already she was not appreciating the service. Okay, so this is, of course, oral speech, and you can find this internet in Twitters and in Facebook and in all of these places where people are really writing down as they speak. Okay, now, let's consider Spanish, because there is a grammatical sentence in Spanish and also in Brazilian Portuguese where negation can occur, for example, between a modal and a verb in the infinitive form. So you can say, puedes no hablar, and you can say also in Brazilian Portuguese, você pode não falar, which means you can not talk. So this kind of sentence has been investigated by Fábricas and González Rodrigues, and they have proposed that they are cases of inhibited eventualities, where the negation does not scope over the event as an object with time and world parameters, but over the description denoted by the lexical predicate which is conveyed in the event. So my question would be, is low negation or may low negation in Brazilian Portuguese perfective and progressive periphrases receive the same kind of analysis? Because here we are having a modal and an infinitive, but the position of negation is between these two verbal elements, let's say. So can Brazilian Portuguese low now be the same kind of phenomena? Well, they propose that the structure of inhibited eventualities in Spanish is different from standard sentential negation, because then they assume this Hamshan and Zenonius and Hamshan 2018 proposition for the clausal spine that is divided in three domains, the C domain is the proposition, T domain is the situation, and the V domain have the events, shows the events. And then in this lower domain here is where the event P is built, and this corresponds more or less to the little VP. And standard sentential negation denies the existence of an eventuality, but in inhibited eventualities, negation is introduced below little VP or below event P, and then it will operate on the descriptive content of the event according to their proposals. So here's an example. This is a standard sentential negation for them. And then it would have, if you have no puedes hablar, you would have a structure as you can see here in B, where negation is above TP and above SP and event P. But with inhibited eventualities, the negation will be low here, and it will appear below the event P, and it will operate on the descriptive content of the event. And so if you have puedes no hablar, no would occur here, and it's what they call an inhibited eventuality. And they concentrate on Spanish structure, right? You have a negation and an infinitive verb in certain structures, as in the examples that we have here in the A sentences. The B sentences are the possibilities in Brazilian Portuguese. All of this is possible in Brazilian Portuguese. So you can have a modal plus an infinitive. Puedes no pagar, puede no llover, no puedes no pagar. And in Brazilian Portuguese, this is all possible as well. May not pay, may not rain, may not pay. Aspectual periphrases, where you have verbs like empezar, which is começar. You can say in Spanish, empezou a não fumar. In Brazilian Portuguese, começou a não fumar. And then also when you have an infinitive, denoting events as complement of perception verbs, for example, Juan la viu no obedecer. João viu ela não obedecer, não obedecer. This is a sentence that's possible in a situation where the mother asks the girl to close the door, and the girl doesn't close the door. So you say that you saw her not to obey her mother. And in another paper, they also analyze inhibited eventualities which may occur in aspectual periphrastic structures that contain gerunds and a negative auxiliary. For example, in 14a, começou no respondiendo, terminou no votando, and contra. This is also possible in Brazilian Portuguese. But what is not possible in Spanish and is possible in Brazilian Portuguese is the one in 15, está no comendo. This is impossible, and they even state that in their paper. But this is exactly what we are focusing on this talk. So not is also ungrammatical when you have the haver plus participle structure. You have to say in Spanish, no he estado en casa. You cannot say he no estado en casa. So inhibited eventualities are restricted to certain non-periphrastic contexts in Spanish, not everywhere. But as we have seen before, the grammatical periphrastic sentences with negation in Spanish are grammatical with low não in Brazilian Portuguese. So you can say, Pedro está não comendo bem, and Pedro tem não estado em casa. I mean, we find these examples in the internet. And additionally, what they say that is interesting is that inhibited eventualities, in this case, when you have an inhibited eventuality, the event description has to lack an initiator, because then it will not be able, if the event will not be able to trigger the event when it lacks an initiator. So, for example, in Spanish, sentences with verbs which allow causativization are ungrammatical in this inchoative reading. So you cannot say in Spanish, vi a la leche or vi la leche no hervir. Or because this verb, hervir, you have to have an initiator. Then you can say, vi la matrona no hervir la leche. Because then you have an initiator which is la matrona. So 18a is impossible because there's no initiator of the event. But here we see the examples, the summary of what they say. that negation is introduced below the event P. The negation has to have an inhibited eventuality, have to have an initiator P here. And when you deny this initiator here, then you produce an entailment that the initiation sub-event is a non, it's not an initiating verb event. And then inhibited eventualities are only possible when you have an initiator. That's what I just said. But in Brazilian Portuguese, sentences as 19, viu leite não ferver, don't look bad for me, and I ask people, because you can have a situation where you are looking at the milk on the bottle, on the pan, and you are see that it's not boiling, it's getting curdled. So you can say, eu vi o leite não ferver. It's impossible. I mean, we cannot do anything here. So this indicates that negation can also appear where there's no initiator in Brazilian Portuguese, and this is different from Spanish. So it seems that lo não seems to appear with any kind of predicate, but this is also something that I still have to check, but it seems that way. But there are several examples of lo não with an accusative verbs, that is, with no initiator. So for example, we can have ter plus participle with an accusative verb. You find this internet. Assim, o site dá total acesso, ter não caído ainda. So they are talking about this site that has not crashed yet. Also can have something like, não teve dia que eu não tenha não chegado atrasado nessa aula. There was not a day in which I had not arrived late to that class, that I had not arrived. And also with the star plus gerund. Naquela hora você disse, mamãe, estou não morrendo agora. It's strange out of context, but this is taken from a how do you say this in English? I don't know, but it's like a religious situation where the girl is getting healed, and she says this is in the internet, estou não morrendo. And then there is also this example, a corrupção praticada por gestores municipais no estado do Ceará está não chegando ao fim. So the corruption practiced by municipal managers in the state of Ceará is not coming to an end. Okay, nós can have now with passives. I found also examples like the ones in 25. Os patologistas usam a palavra negativo para significar que algo foi não visto na amostra de tecido. So the pathologists use the word negative to mean that something was not seen in the tissue sample. This is exactly as it is there. And also a mix of passives, of periphrases and passives. Não entendo porque o Gustavo está sendo não punido. So I have here too the perfect and the progressive periphrases with não in between. And also between two auxiliaries. E está não sendo decidida em parlamento também não, acho. So, I mean, if you have an auxiliary and you can put the não between the auxiliary and the following verb. So the conclusion that we have up to now is that if you consider these two structures in Brazilian Portuguese and Fábrica and Gonzalez Rodrigues analysis of inhibited eventualities, we may ask, does lo não require an initiator? No, lo não is possible with an accusative verbs and in passives. Is lo não inside event P? Probably not. It's probably above event P because it's not restricted to structures where an event has an initiator. Now, lo não does not seem to be the same kind of phenomenon than has been known as inhibited eventualities in the literature. Okay, so the questions now are, what are lo não properties? What are their properties, its properties in perfect and progressive periphrases? And what is its syntactic position for lo não in perfect and progressive periphrases? So for the first question, what are lo não properties in perfect and progressive periphrases? We find that lo não does not correspond to sentential negation because it does not seem to convey the same meaning as sentential negation, because it requires emphasis on the não. that is before the participle. An evidence for this is that the negative clitic form nun is not possible with low noun. So if you have a sentential negation, a simple negation, like 28a, ela não tem vivido bem ultimamente, you can say ela não tem vivido bem ultimamente. You can use nun. But if you have ela tem não vivido bem ultimamente, it's very strange to have ela tem não vivido bem ultimamente, because you are stressing now there, that ela tem não vivido bem ultimamente. This is the meaning of the sentence. The other evidence is that it can co-occur with sentential negation. So you can have a sentence like, eu também não tenho não concordado com nada, which means I have also not agreed with anything intended. It's not the case that I have also not agreed with anything. And also, another example is in 29b. Eu não diria gostar, mas não estou não gostando dele. So this is in the situation where the girl is talking about a boy that she has just met, and she says that she doesn't want to say that she likes him, but it's not the case that she doesn't like him. So this is what we have. Also, this low noun, as I said, conveys modification or contrast, does not deny a preposition previously asserted, modifies the proposition or contrasts the proposition. So, for example, in 38, we have, tenho estado a todo custo não pensar no futuro. Fingir que vai continuar tudo na mesma. Ignorar o que está por vir. Tenho não vivido todo esse tempo. So here I'm modifying the kind of life that I'm having, right? Because all the things that you're doing and it looks like you're not living. So it's not to live, but it's the kind of life that you're having. And then you can contrast, for example, mas de qualquer forma, assim, eu não poderia fazer o que estou não fazendo se eu não tivesse tido a formação que eu tive. So this boy, this guy is complaining that he is not, he's in a job that he's not, I mean, he has not studied or has not prepared for that. But he says that anyway, it's good because he wouldn't be able to do what he is not doing at the moment if he had not had the formation that he has. So it's interesting. So the next question then is, so these are the properties of low noun. And the next question would be, what is the syntactic position for this low noun in these periphrases? Now, we know that in the literature, there are the proposals for syntactic positions for negation. For example, Zanutini in 1997, who proposes that there are several Romance, she works on several Romance dialects to show that there are 4 different positions for sentential negation in the clause spine: neg P1, neg P2, neg P3, and neg P4. So neg P1 is the position for sentential negation, neg P2 is the position for presuppositional negation marker, and then, for example, there is this Piedmontese, this pa, and then neg P is the position for negative markers as name, which precedes adverbs corresponding to always, and then neg P4 is the negative markers below always, for example, no. Also, Poletto in 2008 proposes 4 positions for negative markers, and then she related this position for the etymological types of negation that they have developed from homogeneous classes. She has neg 1 as a kind of scalar negative marker, neg 2 is a minimizer, which are related to the diachronic development as in the Jesperson cycle. Then neg 3 is a quantifier phrase that derived diachronically for words like niente, nada. And then neg 4 is a focus marker, which carries emphasis. And so it's like the polarity item, no. So it's just like a polarity item. And then she also accounts for triple negation, grouping a split neg P base generated within little bit P. And also we have more recently, but also more recently, 10 years ago, the work by de Klerk, who assumes an anosynthetic approach, and she studies instances of neg P as base-generated projections over the over main adjectival predicate in copular constructions. So she just analyzes copular constructions, so with the verb to be or other copular verb, and then an adjective after it. Then she proposes 4 types of negative markers in this nanosynthetic spine. And she proposes the following: that there's a polarity negative, pol-neg, which is the negative polarity marker, which has sentential scope. So it will be something like she's not happy, is she? There are focus markers, which would have a scope over untensed predicates. She's not happy, isn't she? Or degree markers, where they would scope over the predicate term. For example, she's non-professional. And also quantity markers, which has the lowest scope, and it's something like she's unhappy. Now, the interesting thing is that these 4 different categories of negative markers can be analyzed based on their functions, their semantics, their scope, and the difference in stackability. So, for example, polarity negative markers, they deny the predicate. Folk-neg markers deny the predicate, negate the predicate, and the deg-neg, the degree negative markers, and the quantifier negative markers predicate the term negation. So they are lower down, just negating the term. And then they have different scopes over the tense predicate, over the untense predicate, over the predicate term. They stack on each other, and then she's going to show this in the nanosynthetic spine. And they express different things. For example, pol-neg is contradiction, folk-neg is contradiction, deg marker is contradiction, but q marker is contrariety. And the function is also different. Pol marker is deny, folk-neg contrasts and modifies, so you already see where we are going. And then deg-neg markers classify, and q-neg characterizes. And she does this because she observes that there are syncretisms in negative markers in different languages. And negative markers can be arranged in this paradigm that restricts syncretism to contiguous cells. So it's very interesting to see that there are languages where there is one different item for different types of negation. There are languages which have like 2 that are the same, 1 that is different, and 2 that are different. And there are languages like, for example, Czech, that all of the same markers are syncretic. All of the markers are syncretic. And Hungarian, where you have 3 syncretic markers for different types of negations and 1 different marker. So what she proposes is that there is a negative spine, nanospine, that is inserted as a complex constituent in the specifier of neg P, as I marked here. I don't know whether you see my cursor here. And so it's merged here, inserted here. Then you have a split neg that is base generated on a lexical predicate. So it's the predicate negator here. So remember that she's talking about copular sentences with adjectival predicates or PP. And then this negation is base generated low here with over an FP. And there is this sequence here, let's say 1 stack over the other, right? Now, so what she proposes is that there are several negation interpretable features in the causal spine, as you see here. So in the causal spine, you have a pol-P, a folk-P, a deg-P, and a q-P, all with interpretable polar features, folk features, deg features, and quantifier features. But there is just one neg feature, which is interpretable, and it's lower here, right? So the other interpretable features are just scope features. And these features get syntactically valued for negation, but semantically interpreted for scope. So when the nanospine is inserted here, it has an uninterpretable pole feature, for example, but an interpretable neg feature, and so on. So for corresponding to this sequence here, you have a sequence here. And in an affirmative sentence, these scopes positions can be filled by affirmative constituents. So for example, if you have a DAG neg, DAG negation or degree negation, DAG negation necessarily involves the presence of this uninterpretable DAG feature, which is a scope feature, and the interpretable neg feature. And it's on N2 in the spine, in the nanospine. And sometimes, but not necessarily, it will probe in the causal spine. So DAG negation arises when the negative sequence consists of layers N1 and N2, which together spell out a DAG neg marker. Due to the presence of two open argument positions in gradable adjective predicates, again, she's just talking about this, then you have the two QP and DAG-P projected in a nanospine. So for example, you have a non-professional. How is the derivation of a non-professional? First, Q probe, where is Q probe? Here, Q probe is endowed with this IQ feature here, probes down, and then it finds the Q here, an interpretable Q, but valuable neg Q, which in the C command domain, and then it agrees with it. Then it gets valued, and the interpretable features of N1 are checked. Then when DAG is marked, so this is the first stage. Then we have the merge of DAG-P. When DAG is merged in the causal spine, it also probes down and finds its C command domain, the features of N2, and then gets valued, and okay. So you have this known here being spelled out because it's the DAG neg. What happens if we have a FOC neg? Remember, she's only considering gradable adjectives. So she proposes that FOC negation arises in the context of a gradable predicate over DAG-P. And so it always involves a head N3, which is endowed with interpretable FOC, but interpretable neg. So this is what happens if you have something like, she's not happy, but sad. So same thing, FOC-P is merged when everything else was merged, right? And then it probes into VP and finds the uninterpretable FOC neg that is has an interpretable FOC, but interpretable neg, and agrees. Then IFOC here, up here is valued as negation, and then it becomes IFOC neg. Then there's this deletion of the features, but she also says that FOC neg has an EPP feature that moves the entire negative spine, the negative nanospine, to spec FOC-P. And then when POL-P is merged, it probes down. It doesn't find any value, so it's valued as affirmative. So this is her proposal for she's not happy but sad. This is just for you to understand the system that she proposes. Now, if we assume her framework, we could consider negative markers in Brazilian Portuguese. We see that there is also syncretism in negative markers in Brazilian Portuguese. We have pol neg because we have sentential negation as eu não tenho comido chocolate. We have FOC neg because you can also say eu tenho comido não chocolate, mas peras. And also DAG neg, eu tenho sido cantor não profissional. And also Q neg, eu tenho sido infeliz. So we have syncretism at least between pol neg, FOC neg, and DAG neg. So in this framework, what is the category position of low noun? It can't be Q neg because the morphological exponent for Q neg in Brazilian Portuguese is not known. It can't be POL-P because as we saw before, low noun may co-occur with sentential negation. So these two markers belong to different categories, right? Because they cannot occur if they are the same category. So what we have left is DAG neg and FOC neg. So what is it? Let's look at DAG neg first. She says that this degree negation takes scope over in a DAG-P, and then this DAG-P it's proposed by Korver to be made up of two functional projections in the extended projection of gradable adjectives. So that's why you can have a degree adjective over there. But so degree negative markers scope over the predicate term and not over the entire untensed predicate, as FOC markers do. So when you say she's very non-professional, it means that she's very not professional, not that she's not very professional. So non does not take over scope over very, but just only over professional. Now, we know that in Brazilian Portuguese, non can be attached to adjectives and particles. You can say something like, sob a alegação de ser lento, não confiável e parcial, ou o não viciado pode ter alguns inimigos. So we can also have this in English and in French. We can have non also attached to nominals, for example, non-payment, and also in Brazilian Portuguese, you can have não attached to nouns, diante do não pagamento da dívida. And we also find even não attached to nouns in the internet. O não, this is the title of a book. O não livro, contos e poesias nunca lidos para leitores que nunca lerão. This is the title of a book. And also you can have something like, mas na verdade o pessoal acabou lotando o Salão Nobre para descobrir que se trata de um não estudo. As empresas de transporte particular de passageiros por aplicativo não enviaram seus dados. So this is a situation where everybody is waiting for this meeting where they are going to study something about the transport applicative, but in the end, nothing happened. So they had a não estudo. They had a not study or non-study. I don't even know how to say this in English. And so now is kind of really interesting in Brazilian Portuguese. Now, this prefix now expresses contradiction. And low now also expresses contradiction, but differently from the prefix, it can occur before uninflected verbal forms, past participle, present participle, and infinitives, as I said. So can we say that this now is dag-nag? I'm going to first say that it's not dag-nag, but I mean, it may be that it appeared because of dag-nag, because consider the property of stackability. If markers can stack, they belong to different categories. And we have this example in 36. Que a negociação do empregado constitua ato de concorrência ou, ainda que não desleal, seja prejudicial ao serviço. So here we have não. I'm sorry, I can't see what I'm here. Here I have não, and then you have desleal. So it's possible to have não or stacking over a Q-neg, right? So you can have a dag não stacking over a Q-neg. Okay. So this now here is the dag-nag, and this is the Q-neg. But no, low now can stack over dag-nag. You can say something like, ela, de propósito, tinha não visto o não pagamento da fatura. So here you have não visto o não pagamento. You have não over an occurrence of dag-nag. So they probably belong to different categories. However, so I think it's not dag-nag, but however, it may be involved in the emergence of low now, which is under investigation, and I can talk about this later. So in sum, low now has in common with the prefix now, a dag marker, and different from other prefixes as e, in, this, which are q and ag markers, the fact that it expresses a contradiction. Dag now applies to nouns, adjectives, and participle, whereas low now applies to uninflected verbal forms. And low now is not dag-nag, according to what we've seen so far. So let's see if low now is hoc-nag. So let's review its property. Low now does not correspond to sentential negation, as we have seen before, because you cannot have it with the It has a different property because it cannot be, as sentential negation, be replaced by the clitic nun. Low noun may co-occur with sentential negation. You can have both sentential negation and noun. You can have both pol P and poc P. And then low noun expresses modification or contrast, as we have seen earlier. So these properties have been associated with Fock-Nagel markers by de Clercq. So Fock-Nagel markers take scope in a low focus phrase, a projection dominating little vp. And she says, consequently, they do not take scope over the tensed predicate, and their scope is restricted to the untensed predicate. So my proposal is that low noun is an instance of Fock-Nagel in Brazilian Portuguese. Okay, now the question is, what is the syntactic position of Fock-Nagel in perfect and progressive periphrases in Brazilian Portuguese? Because remember that de Clercq is talking about copular sentences. So she's talking about negation occurring over an adjective or a predicate. But here we are talking about the verbal structure with an auxiliary and then a participle or a gerund. And also we have seen that low noun does not seem to have the same properties of inhibited eventuality. So it's not merged below event P because it can appear with any kind of predicate. So the proposal for what I'm trying to investigate here is that it's Fock-Nagel. So when we look at, for example, what is the structure of progressives and perfect tenses or periphrases in English, in languages like English? So Ramchan 2018 has proposed this account for the progressive and the perfect periphrase for English. So for a progressive, be plus ing, be is here, right? Is in event P, and then Mary, which is in the VP, moves here, and then ing is, this is the ing phrase, right? Mary moves here, and then you have then Mary moving up, and then you have Mary is working, for example, or is crossing the street in this example. For the perfect, for have plus ed, she proposes that have is outside event P. It's over asp P because it has different properties in English. It's interesting to see her book. Now, in Brazilian Portuguese, perfect tenses are not as in English because the meaning of ter plus participle is very restricted. This has been shown by George and Pianesi and other people, that a sentence as 44 cannot have a literal English translation. Pedro tem comido muita fruta desde o ano passado, which is literally, Pedro has eaten a lot of fruit since last year. In English, the perfect periphrasis means that since that point in time, the amount of eating fruit is a lot. But in Brazilian Portuguese, it means that the habit of eating a lot of fruit started last year. So it has a durative meaning, according to George and Pianesi. And in fact, Ronald Bellini Mendes observes that in contemporary Brazilian Portuguese, not only perfect, but also progressive periphrases convey durative values when the auxiliary is in the present tense, okay? So the periphrases are equivalent, according to him. Either one can be used in this context. So we can have either ter plus participle or star plus gerund in a sentence as 45. Eu acho que o noticiário em TV tem melhorado bastante. Ou eu acho que o noticiário em TV está melhorando bastante. They mean same thing. Also, this is according to him. Also, we can have star and ter. Eu estou procurando encaminhá-la para outra coisa. Ou eu tenho procurado encaminhá-la para outra coisa. And also, both periphrases may convey also imperative aspectual value. For example, o pessoal tem dito que a televisão está muito ruim. Ou o pessoal está dizendo que a televisão está muito ruim. Mean the same thing. People have been saying that television is very bad. If you have star and ter, also, eles estão falando muito nisso. Eles têm falado muito nisso. This is what it means. They have been talking a lot about that. And interestingly, in Lithuanian, a periphrastic construction with negative ne attached to the past participle is possible in cases where there is a result of no participation in an event. So in Lithuanian, there are two positions for this name, say above event P and below event P when there's no participation in an event. Fábricas and González Rodrigues explain these differences between Spanish, no, and Lithuanian, proposing that when negation follows an auxiliary verb, as it's the case in Lithuanian, it's merged in a neg phrase, which is placed below aspect phrase. Both the negation and the participle are built within the event domain. But I propose that, differently from English and different from Lithuanian, in Brazilian Portuguese, not only the non-finite verb, but also the auxiliaries star and B, and star B and have there are merged inside event P in the lower domain. Then the lexical verbs get their suffix ing and ed inside the event. Low noun is an instance of FOC P, and FOC P is merged above event P in the low left periphery, according to the proposal by Belletti. Now, if FOC P is merged above event P in Brazilian Portuguese, where it is merged in the low periphery? So I have to assume that FOC P is merged above SP. And this is not impossible, because it has been argued in the literature that FOC P and top P in the low left periphery are merged above SP in some languages, for example, in Lebanese Arabic or Jordanian Arabic. So in periphrastic verbal structures in Brazilian Portuguese, I assume that both auxiliaries and lexical verbs are merged inside the verbal domain. Both verbs move out of the P, but only the lexical verb stays in ASP, and the auxiliary goes up to T. And this is something that I have proposed a long time ago, the difference between Brazilian Portuguese and European Portuguese. And there's also the work by Araújo Adriano in his dissertation. So this would be the structure. Both auxiliaries are merged, star are merged, let's see here, in the main verbs, they are merged inside the EVP. They are merged down here. Auxiliaries move up to T to check temporal features, and main verbs move to S and stay here. Low noun is FOC neg here above SP. And then you can explain the order. Eu tenho, estou não vendo, tenho não feito. Then the verb is here, FOC neg is here, noun is here, and then ASP, and then we have what the positions that we have seen in the paper here. So the conclusion is that Brazilian has its recent construction in which the negative word noun has a new position in the slot between the auxiliary and the verb, and a position that is not found in other Romance languages as far as I know. So in order to analyze this negation marker, I assume the Clerk's syntactic approach. This new negation marker is analyzed as FOC neg marker merged above ASP P, and this is because there is this syncretism in Brazilian Portuguese, and I think this framework suits what we are doing here, right? But differently from Ramchand's analysis for progressive and perfect prefixes in English, I propose that both auxiliaries star and ter are merged inside event P, because they almost have this the perfect and the perfect prefixes and the progressive prefixes are very, say, similar in Brazilian Portuguese, as Ronald Bellini Mendes showing. He's also shown diachronically how this happens. But there are remaining questions, of course, and many remaining questions. Why and how it emerged in Brazilian Portuguese? There are some possible answers that I can tell you now. And why is it not possible in other Romance languages? So this is it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonia, for this excellent conference, which I love it. And I am sure our Zoom na Cartografia audience did appreciate your presentation as well. Now I am going to read the questions from our audience. And if you have any questions or comments, please just type them on the YouTube chat or send an email to the email address appearing on the YouTube chat. So the first question is, sorry, the first question is, okay. Is the La Casa group just emailed the following question. I am going to read, and Achilles is copying and pasting the questions for you on the Zoom chat. So, if low não enters the derivation in FOC neg, which you identify as the same spec FOC from Bellet's work, you how can you explain the following data? 1, eu estou não em vão vendo, I am not in vain seeing, and 2, eu tenho não em vão feito. And also, eu estou em vão não vendo, and 4, eu tenho em vão não feito. It looks as though only the last 2 instances of não, namely those appearing in 3 and 4, are merged within the extended projection of the V in spec FOC. It seems that the first 2, não em vão, are instances of negation which are merged within the extended projection of the adverb in then. So that seems to be confirmed by the co-occurrence with negative words, which is possible only for the last 2 instances of não. Eu estou em vão não vendo nada. Eu tenho em vão não feito nada. But not, it is not possible. Eu estou não em vão vendo nada, or eu tenho não em vão feito nada.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question, for the data, and thank you first because you don't disagree that there is this sentences exist in Brazilian Portuguese. And yeah, so I haven't looked at the interaction of this now with the adverbs. So this is something that I have to do. And also, so this is very interesting. I'm going to check this carefully. And because you are showing that there is a different interaction with this now when you have a negative word. So this is something that I have to do. And also I have to look at the cases where you have a negative raising. I'm not sure whether this is possible. This is also I have to check. And there's also another thing that I have to check, which is when you have ellipses, when you have VP ellipses, if you can say something like o João tem não comido ultimamente, o Pedro também tem. This is strange. So I have to see where I'm going to put this não and why. And you cannot say o João tem não comido ultimamente, o Pedro também tem não. Impossible. What you can say, I think, is João tem não comido ultimamente e o Pedro também tem não comido. You have to repeat the whole thing. So I think this position is, this position looks like it's focus negation because it's you have to focalize, it modifies, it contrasts. But the exact position in the spine, and if you consider all the adverbs, and also the interaction with other kinds of negation, this still has to be, I still have to think about that. And also, Yeah, and this is something, I mean, still have to work. But thank you very much. I'm going to look at this carefully.
Thank you, Sonia. Now, there is a comment by Sibyl Vachaldes. Thanks a lot for the amazing presentation, Sonia. We have a student from the NEG group just mailed us the question, and I'm going to read. In your talk, you looked at periphrastic constructions where the lower negation, which has a focal-like flavors, appears between one inflected auxiliary and the main verb, which is non-finite. Should the same analysis be extended to periphrastic constructions with nominal forms of the verb whose first auxiliary is not finite, as in the following example? Tendo não feito a tarefa, João foi embora. Having not done the homework, John left out.
Thank you again for the interesting question. In fact, I'm not sure the same analysis can be extended to this kind of say, non-finite constructions, because it seems to be possible in other languages, even in languages like Spanish and even in English. So, I mean, this is, I think this also has to be studied separately. It's because it's not the same kind of, because the verb is non-finite, the tendo, for example, não feito a tarefa. And I mean, where is this verb, right? Where is it in the structure? And I think there are studies on this kind of constructions in other languages, in other Romance languages, and I probably wouldn't extend, but again, this is something that has to be checked. So thank you.
Okay, Sonia. And Renato Lacerda just asked, following on the YouTube chat. Thank you, Renato, for being here with us. So the question, can you please expand on the reasons to propose ter, estar are merged within little VP? I am concerned that could case ter, estar to scope under FOCNEG and also intervene on the movement of the lexical verb.
Okay, so let me go back to this, right? So he's saying that why are they starting there merged here with the verb, and so this is different from what Ramchan is proposing. Well, the main reason, let's say to begin with, was just like a semantic reason, because this kind of the have participle and the be part and the estar and gerund in Brazilian Portuguese are kind of similarly semantically, but it is also something that I have to check, because of course I have to look at the tense, because it's when you have the present tense. But that was the reason, and then I thought that would make sense to think that these verbs start inside the event P, and then I'm not sure whether, because I think that I would move the auxiliary verb, and then, I mean, if you can think about, I see what you mean, because if I move the main verb, I would have some kind of intervention here, and I couldn't move this here, right? I couldn't move the auxiliary verb over the main verb. I haven't thought about this yet, but I don't think this would be too much of a problem. because you would have first movement here, and then this would move when aspect was merged. And then, yeah, okay. So a possible way out of this is to assume, as Araújo Adriano does, that in periphrases in Brazilian Portuguese, this kind of periphrases, both the auxiliary and the non-finite verb are merged together inside the VP, and they move together to ASP P, and then the auxiliary verb moves out of ASP P, moves to T. And so in this sense, I would overcome the problem that you are. So this is a possible solution. And I have to look at Araújo Adriano's proposal and maybe think about that too. But thank you. Renato always has good questions.
Yeah. And another student from the La Casa group just emailed me the following question. I guess Dave attended the SPEC conference last year because he said, in a talk given at UFSC last year, Shlomsky argued that ser, to be verb, can occupy the lower focus position in Brazilian Portuguese, being a strategy to mark the focus in sentences like o João tinha comprado, foi uma casa. I guess the following data is an interesting piece of evidence favoring the merger of lower negation in Beletti's FOC-P. While one can have sentence negation co-occurring with Shlomsky's type of focal structure, as in, o João não tinha comprado, foi uma casa. We definitely cannot have the lower negation with this Shlomskyan strategy to mark the focus in the sentence. O João tinha não comprado, foi uma casa.
That's interesting. O João não tinha comprado, foi uma casa. That's not good. But we can have o João tinha não comprado, foi uma. We cannot have the lower negation with Shlomsky strategies to mark the focus. Yeah. So you couldn't have two negations, let's say, in focus, right? Yeah. Thank you very much. Very interesting observations.
Yeah. This is an interesting data. Maybe can have the evidence for the position.
Right. Thank you.
So, Renato Lacerda replied to your answer. Thank you for talk and the great insights.
He's always so sweet.
Yeah, always sweet. Sonia, I also have a question on my own. What is the focal type of the constructions as described in your paper? Eu tenho não feito a tarefa. I have not done the homework. As well as in the other sentence, you've discussed, it looks as though we don't have informational focus. The type of focus ordinarily associated with Beletti's Lao IP area. So, if this is the case, we should expect that your constructions feature the higher position, and some remnant movement should be assumed to account for the final word order.
Yes, this is something to take into account. What kind of focus is this?
Yeah, yeah.
That's important. Another question that somebody asked me on another occasion is that why is this focus? Why is this focus negate? Why we have a negation as focus? Because negation is negation, right? But on top of being negation, it has focus. It has emphasis. Actually, it has emphasis, right? This is the focus here. I mean, it's not kind of informational focus, or I mean, it's just like an emphatic information that it conveys. So this is a question because and how it emerges in the language, because one of my hypotheses is that, well, because we have bag neg, we have degree negation, não profissional, you have this kind of não, which is not negate. It's kind of, it's not a constituent negation, right? But we have constituent negation as well. Eu comi não peras, mas maçãs, something like that. So it looks like it's a kind of constituent negation, but it's not really a constituent negation because it has all of these properties that I mentioned. And interestingly, this não as a morphological deck marker, let's say, has been studied in some literature on the morphological aspects of não in Brazilian Portuguese. So there are kinds of não, and one of these não is this não of não profissional, for example. And it has appeared later in the language, say 19th century, something like that. I have the data somewhere, maybe here. And in one dissertation, the Campos said, which is the author, says that it may have appeared from relative sentences. So, for example, essa é uma questão que foi não estudada, for example, right? And then from there it goes to other, which would mean essa é uma questão que não foi estudada. So from that would be the origin of this não in the diachronic data. But I mean, I'm not sure that this can be the whole answer, because we are talking about positions in the sentence, right? We are talking, there's a verb, there's an auxiliary, and there's this non-finite verb, which is, of course, has nominal, how to say, taste, and nominal flavors, but it's still a verbal element. So yeah, so all of these questions are important, especially the question about what kind of focus is this. So for me, it's just the label, FOCNEG, but I haven't really thought about the meaning of focus in this position or in Delette's proposal. So it seems simple, but it's not.
No, it is not simple, Sonia.
Why do we have this language?
Yeah. And Paulo Angelo just typed this question on the YouTube chat. Hi, Paulo. Thank you for being here with us. Sonia, the question is, what are your insights on the reasons why Brazilian Portuguese does not have a low negation?
Brazilian Portuguese does not have a low negation in what sense, Paulo? Because
I don't know.
That Brazilian Portuguese does not have a low negation. Because I'm thinking, low negation, you mean inside the VP, little VP? Is that what you mean?
Maybe if Paulo, I don't know if Paulo.
Like in an individual, no, but that couldn't be. So what is this? I didn't understand, Paulo. I'm sorry.
I don't know if Paulo writes anything in some more in the chat. Okay, Sonia. He said, actually, why alô não has not emerged in Brazilian Portuguese.
But I think it has emerged, right? This is what I'm talking. Low now, I mean, is this low now here that I'm talking about when I say low now or low negation? So I'm not sure whether when he says low negation or low now if we're saying talk about the same thing.
Why? And I think we don't have new questions from the audience. So if someone here in the Zoom wanna ask a question to Sonia, please just turn on your video and microphone and ask her directly.
Yes, I have one. So, Sonia, thank you very much for this very interesting talk, which we appreciated a lot. Thank you. So, Sonia, this type of structure featuring this low negation can be taken, I think, as an interesting diagnostic for clausal domains, namely for detecting whether we have a monoclausal or a biclausal structure. So back to your papers from the last decade, I mean those papers on complex predication structures, one would expect that if modal, spectral, and motion verbs in Brazilian Portuguese are not functional verbs, one could combine more than one low negation in the same token. So, in a word, besides the low negation having scope over the lexical verb, one could have as many low negations as we have functional or non-complex predicates in the structure. Yes. What do you think about it? So we can take
Go ahead.
low negation as a diagnostic for the type of domain we have in a token. If we have, for instance, a functional verb as a functional verb or as a lexical verb in Brazilian Portuguese, because we could combine more than one lower negation in the same token.
Yes, this is something that also is a very interesting idea. Yeah, because all my story of Brazilian Portuguese having lost complex predicates, so having lost the contiguity with the causatives and all this story. This was one of the diagnostics at that time. So because you could have now between these kind of verbs, but then yes, maybe it's on another path of investigation. Yes. So many things that we can think about this. So many variables. And also depends on what framework you are using. For example, here I'm mixing the clerics, which is nanosyntax, with and also Ramchans with the event P and everything, with the let and all these positions for focus P. So I mean, it's a lot of work, but still, I'm in the beginning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Raquel, could you say anything or not?
The talk made me think a lot because somehow I also deal with negation in my research, but with WH. But I just have to say thank you so much. It was very interesting, very, very clear. So I liked a lot.
Thank you.
And I have some things to think about, but I will have a lot more to think with this talk, surely.
Thank you. If you have any insights, you just email me.
Yes.
What happens when you have a WH there?
Yes, thank you.
And Sonia, Paulo write in the chat, amazing talk. We can discuss it later. I can send you an email, Sonia. And
Okay.
I've just noticed that I wrote not in why alone, não.
Okay, that's why it was strange.
Yeah. Sorry
Okay,
about
but no
the
problem.
confusion, Paulo writes.
Yeah. No, it's okay. But we can talk about this, Paulo, because I have some ideas. But it was too much for this talk.
Thank you, Sonia, and thank you, Paulo. Well, we unfortunately are pushed for time, so it has been a great pleasure to attend this conference and to interact with you. Sonia, thank you so much for your support. And
thank you. Thank you, and thank you for all the interesting observations and suggestions. This is going to be very important for me. Can you then send me the questions by somehow, or are they in the? Yeah. Okay.
We can. We would like to announce our next Zoom na Cartografia guest, Professor Urs Schlomsky, who is coming to Floripa as a visiting professor next month. And it is going to be the first on-site Zoom na Cartografia on November 30. Which will also be broadcast to our Zoom na Cartografia audience. So
awesome.
So see you in our next Zoom. Now, Achilles, do you want to say something so we can finish our live?
Okay, Sonia, thank you again so much for this lovely talk, which we appreciate a lot. I also would like to thank João, Sandra, and Danton for their partnership. And Sonia, could you please stay in the room just 1 minute so we can take with our students? And thank you, dear audience. See you in the next Zoom, and long life to syntactic cartography and to its nanosyntax.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.